I funded a disease modeling group that uses computer simulation, and that work has been phenomenal in helping us target our polio eradication resources and which parts of Nigeria should we work harder on. And it's very natural, if you have a group like that, to say, hey, look at something like a Spanish flu in the modern day. Health systems are far better. And so you think, hey, that wouldn't be very bad. Well, we tried it, and there are some assumptions we had to make. But what we showed is that the force of infection because of modern transport, which compared to 1918 is over 50 times as great. And so if you get something like a flu, and you look at that map of how within days, it's basically in all urban centers of the entire globe, that is very eye-opening. That didn't happen with Spanish flu in the past.
Ideally, the response to COVID should be the establishment of a global healthcare system, a basic healthcare system for the entire human race. We need some kind of global loyalty and global identity.
Now, we did have countries that did a good job. Australia is an example. So we have to create a new team. I believe we should create what I call the GERM team. GERM stands for Global Epidemic Response and Mobilization. This group is full-time. Their only priority is pandemic prevention.
With all the current issues on our agenda, we tend to forget that we are in the midst of the fourth industrial revolution, which accelerates global change in much more comprehensive and faster ways than the previous three revolutions.
And you see, the difference of this fourth industrial revolution is it doesn't change what you are doing. It changes you. If you take genetic editing, right. Just as an example, it's you who are changed. Yeah. And of course, this has a big impact on your identity.
We need to realize that humans are now hackable animals. You can hack them. A good two-way communication system, direct communication system between brains and computers, this is kind of the watershed moment. I mean, once you have a good two-way, nobody has any idea what happens after that. Well, I think maybe in a couple of decades when people look back, the thing they will remember from the COVID crisis is this is the moment when everything went digital. And if this was the moment when everything became monitored, that we agreed to be surveyed all the time, not just in authoritarian regimes, but even in democracies. And maybe most importantly at all, this was the moment when surveillance started going under the skin. I think that the big process that's happening right now in the world is hacking human beings, the ability to hack humans, to understand deeply what's happening within you, what makes you go. And for that, the most important data is not what you read and who you meet and what you buy, it's what's happening inside your body. So we had these two big revolutions, the computer science revolution, or the infotech revolution, and the revolution in the biological sciences. And they are still separate, but they are about to merge.
History is truly at a turning point. We do not yet know the full extent and the systemic and structural changes which will happen. However, we do know that global energy systems, food systems, and supply chains will be deeply affected.
They're not going to stop. Britain is already talking about giving up sovereignty. People in Ireland are already saying, what can we do? What can we do? There are 198 countries that are, discussing giving up sovereignty.
40 countries have already signed on, including the big guys, the EU, the UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Norway, Switzerland, the real countries. 40 countries have already signed on. So presumably they already have the votes. So the vote will be taken, and then there's a 6-month period before the actual vote becomes effective, and that's in November. And that's interesting timing, because no matter which party wins in the fall, presumably it won't matter because this creates a platform for global governance. Because if you take healthcare decisions that we saw for the last 2.5 years have effectively destroyed American businesses, hurt people's lives, that authority now goes to Tedros at the WHO. So 99.4% of people in the world would be impacted by this because 194 nations are a part of the WHO.
Well, I think maybe in a couple of decades when people look back, the thing they will remember from the COVID crisis is this is the moment when everything went digital. And if this was the moment when everything became monitored, that we agreed to be surveyed all the time, not just in authoritarian regimes, but even in democracies. And maybe most importantly at all, this was the moment when surveillance started going under the skin.
Well, what's happened is the amendments which were actually created in HHS by our government remove all restraints from Tedros. They take away the restraints on his declaring a health emergency in a country. He can now declare a health emergency in a country without, if the amendments pass on May 22nd through May 28th. He can declare a health emergency in a country without consulting with the country, without getting any information from the country. And if the country resists, he can go ahead and within 24 to 48 hours, he can begin to mobilize all the resources of the UN against the country, which is resistant to saying that it has a health emergency that might influence other nations.
The merger of biotech and infotech and the rise of total surveillance regimes might make democracy not just less efficient than dictatorships, but actually meaningless. The nature of money is going to change quite dramatically. The old systems of trust and of ownership will have to adapt radically. Maybe the financial system will become so complicated as AI takes over more and more of the action that it will be just too complicated for the human mind. So how does a system functions when no human really understands it? Maybe the ultimate destiny of Homo sapiens is just be consumers. You don't need humans for anything except as consumers. There are many occasions in history when people didn't value very much other people as consumers. If you think about slave economies, so you didn't think, oh, we should liberate all the slaves and improve their conditions so that they will buy our products. And in the future, slavery is unlikely to return. If you need less humans, you definitely don't need slaves. But you could, for example, encounter a situation in which machines are also the consumers. You need consumers, but even in consumption, somebody is doing a better job than humans. You could have an entire economy flourishing without humans in the loop. You can have one corporation that mines ore and produces steel and sells it to a second corporation that produces robots. And they are sold back to the mining corporation that mines more steel, more iron, produces steel, sell it to the robotics corporation. And these two corporations can form an entire economic ecosystem which can spread from planet Earth to other planets and throughout the galaxy, just colonizing new planets and asteroids to mine things, and you just don't need humans in the loop.
If you think about it, AI is actually the fastest path to communism. So, if implemented correctly, AI could actually theoretically solve for abundance. Like, we could totally get to a situation where nobody has to work, everybody is provided for with a comfortable state of being, comfortable living. AI could automate all the farming, weed out systematic corruption, thereby bringing us to as close as possible to genuine equality. So basically, everything that everybody loves about communism, but without the collective farm. Because let's be real, Enforced farming is really not a vibe.
What does a world look like when it is dominated by super intelligent but non-conscious algorithms?
Sapiens, and it's written by Professor Yuval Noah Harari. And I found the book because it was recommended on a book list by Bill Gates and later Barack Obama as one of the most influential books that both of them had read within the last 10 years. So if it was good enough for them, I had to check it out, and it absolutely blew my mind.
We are in the process of acquiring divine abilities, of turning ourselves into gods. And I mean this in the most literal sense possible. It's not a metaphor.
I really sincerely believe you're helping our group get focused on what are the possibilities of the future and some things that we ought to be thinking about.
If you think about the abilities of gods according to various mythologies, we are now acquiring these abilities through ourselves. Like in the Bible, God is the creator. His chief power is to create. He creates animals and plants and humans according to his wishes. Now we are gaining this power to create life, just like God, and in a way, we even go beyond the biblical God. Because even if you believe the Bible, the only thing God managed to create are organic beings. All these trees and giraffes and humans, they are just organic. But we are now trying to create inorganic entities, inorganic life forms, cyborgs, artificial intelligence, and so forth. If we succeed, and there is a very good chance we will, then very soon we will be beyond the God of the Bible.